Cynthia Hughes and Tim Hale. Both have created an organization called Patriot Freedom Project. And very interesting. This is all about J6, correct? Basically, the false flag of J6. I say it openly. My audience knows what's going on, and most people that, I think most people in America know what's going on at this point, unless they've been living under a rock. Tim actually served 3 years in jail. You're in prison for 3 years in jail, and just got out. So you've been out for a full year now, Tim?
Yep, I just passed the 1 year mark. Yes, sir.
How do you feel?
Feel liberated. No, I mean
How bad?
I feel vindicated, and I can't wait for the 20th.
All
It's
right,
almost like
none
it
of
was
us
worth it.
can.
Yeah.
None of us can. Cynthia, so why don't you guys tell me a little bit? We'll talk about your prison experience, Tim. I really want to go into that. Especially you met the actual agitators that created this false flag, correct?
I met a few of them. Yes.
Wow. And they came clean with you. They told you what they did.
Yeah. It's
That's
it's
insane.
actually it's very surreal when they say, "Yeah, I was a crisis actor," but
A
yeah,
crisis actors.
yeah, there's a
Crisis
lot we
act.
could get into there.
Okay, that's going to be the main topic of the show. I really want to talk about. But let's talk about this Patriot Freedom Project. Cynthia, go ahead and kick it off.
Oh, thank you very, very much. I appreciate you having us both on. Patriot Freedom Project got started after, obviously Tim got arrested. And Tim was telling me what was going on inside the jail. Fathers not being able to talk to their children, not being able to, husbands not being able to talk to their wives. And there was really no organization. There was no place to go for, family comfort to get information to stay on top of things. One of the great things that we created was a family, like group. We had chat groups, on Signal, Telegram, texting groups. And these women who had husbands that were inside the DC jail, it was a great tool for them because sometimes they would be on lockdown. Well, not sometimes, most of the time they would be on lockdown. Tim will tell you all about the 23-hour a day solitary confinement. He and all the other men that he was with were in for a very, very long time. So these women needed a place to go to be able to connect. It's good to talk to somebody who understands and knows what you're going through. Obviously we know there's been a lot of people that have opposed January 6th. They've been afraid to talk about January 6th. They don't know the truth about January 6th. So we created, me out here, Tim inside there, we created, a family organization. And it grew pretty rapidly. And we caught the attention of Julie Kelly, and she gave us a lot of support. And next thing, we were talking to Dinesh D'Souza, and he sent us our first donation, which was $100,000. And then a
Wow.
few months later, he sent another 50,000, and Patriot Freedom Project was born. And we immediately got to work. We knew that these public defenders, or we call them public pretenders, we knew that they were not capable, especially the ones in DC in the beginning of this, because there are a few good public defenders somewhere out here. But we knew in the beginning of this that these lawyers, I mean, Tim had the worst public defender. You couldn't conversate with this man without him bringing up his hatred for Donald Trump. And,
So
you
they
knew
were
that
all playing for that team. It was obvious. I mean, they were all they were
100%.
probably all being handled as well. Easy. I mean, common sense.
Yeah, yeah. So nobody was going to get a fair trial, especially anybody who had controversy. I mean, some people, I mean, everything was controversial, right? We know that. But some people had significant circumstances surrounding them. And Tim can elaborate on that if he chooses to later on. But, we needed to make sure that there was going to be proper representation. So as we continued to raise money, we connected with Steve Bannon. He was very instrumental in helping us raise our first $1 million. And we started helping with legal fees all over the place. And, it's very important to keep in mind, while we knew that there were 54 men sitting in the DC jail, and that's what everybody was talking about, there were many people sitting in jails around the country in
People are
similar
still getting
circumstances.
arrested right now, right?
We had 3
Yes.
arrests just this week, just this week.
And this is all people that were there.
Well, Tim could talk more to that. I'm more of like a family advocate. I raise the money, I pay for the legal fees, or I help with the legal fees, but mainly I take care of the families. We make sure rent is paid, mortgage is paid, electric bills are paid. We
Wow.
make sure, Christmas is pulled off. We just mailed out a ton of packages yesterday filled with gift cards. People donated gift cards. We want to make sure these women whose husbands are languishing behind bars have normalcy. They need to do their own Christmas shopping. They need to do their own food shopping. We don't need to do everything for them. And they need that. They
Well,
want
God
that.
bless you. God bless you on that.
So
That's amazing.
we thank you. And it goes beyond that. There's a lot of children that don't have health insurance now. So we've paid COBRA payments. We've helped with,
Jeez.
dental, oral surgery. Kids had to get a tooth pulled. The list is long. We help with travel from, wherever somebody is living to be able to visit their loved one who's in jail. Because of course, you're talking, some of these women have to drive 13, 14, 15 hours one way to get to the prison to visit their husband. And sometimes they get there and the visit gets canceled with no warning, no nothing. You're talking hotel rooms, gas. There's so much fallout and collateral damage to this, and nobody talks about it. Nobody
Well, I would
does.
imagine when the dust settles, a lot of people are going to be millionaires off this. I'm just going to say it right now.
We
I
hope
think
so. We hope
I
so.
think now I think with Trump coming in and the truth starting to being revealed and shows like this, there's no way they can stop what's coming. I mean, I'm going to be very positive about this. I really do believe all these people are going to be compensated very, very handsomely, in my mind.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. And, obviously,
I
we
feel
can't
it.
speak for President Trump, but I'll say this. I'm not sure if you're aware, but I've held a press conference, and at the Triangle on Capitol Hill. And President Trump saw the press conference. We had a few families there. Tim was still in jail at the time. And President Trump's people reached out to me afterwards. And President Trump and I, we had met, and I was able to really bring him up to speed on the fallout, in terms of the family, on the collateral, on the humanitarian side, let's say that. And since that time, we have had five or six fundraisers, and President Trump has attended several of them. And he has met these children, he has met these families, and he has told these families how important they are and that he's going to make things right for them. And that he's proud of these kids. And, he tells them that their fathers are good people.
Wow.
President Trump is an extraordinary man,
Yeah, he is.
extraordinary.
Absolutely.
We're never going to see anything even remotely close to the kind of president that this man
Wow, the
is.
greatest president ever in my mind.
Yes, 100%. And so he's very, very, he cares very much about these families and these children. He's made it very known, and he has said to them that they're going to have great lives when he gets back into office. And so I believe him
So see,
wholeheartedly.
just like what I said, it's
Yeah,
coming.
yeah, yeah.
It's
So,
coming.
you know, but and so that's where my side is. Like, I really, I want to see, for me, children, you can't let children, fall to the wayside. You have to make sure children are, these kids are being helped. These kids have witnessed violent raids on their homes. They have witnessed their fathers dragged out of their homes in their boxers, moms be arrested and detained. We can't ignore that. And children, they have to be comforted, and they have to be told that, that they're okay, that the police are not bad, that their parents are not bad people. And that's what we've
The
done.
people that are running this shadow government right now are psychopaths. They don't care. They're sick. They're very sick mentally. I would even go as far to say they're demonic. And a lot of people would agree with that. But that's what we're up against. This is a fight of good versus evil.
Yeah, yeah. And Tim could tell you, and he will. He'll tell you a lot more, as he has gotten into the weeds of January 6th. And he was in jail
So
with a lot of people.
so if people want to donate or anything, I know you're pressed for time. You got to go soon. But where do people go to donate and help out or find more information on this? Is it Patriot freedomproject.org or what is it?
So we have two websites. So we have patriotfreedomproject.com. And you can go there, you can see where and how to donate. We have a donation wish list page. You can find all the important information about what we do and how we do it. Some special messages from President Trump. And you can do that with patriotfreedomproject.com. But
Dot
we also
com.
have a site called dueprocessdenied.org. And
Due process denied.org.
dueprocessdenied.org.
Okay.
So we made a three-part docuseries. And if you go to dueprocessdenied.org, you can see all of that there for free. We've written a book published by Post Hill Press. where we talk about the families and what's happened to them and what was like done to their home. We have some families whose kitchen caught on fire after flashbangs were thrown into their home, through windows, broke out the windows. So we tell the stories of some of these families in our book to
So they've been suffering like terrorism.
basically. I mean, Tim will elaborate a lot more on that side of it. But if anybody, just pardons are going to bring immediate relief for these people, but it doesn't end there. The need for these families is ongoing. Just because somebody gets out of prison after they have been in solitary confinement and in jail for 4 years now, people's livelihoods have been lost, life savings have been lost, long careers have been lost, health insurance has been lost. These men are not going to get out of prison and come home and say, okay, let me pick up where I left off. You have to be a special person to be able to do that. Tim was able to do that, but Tim doesn't have a wife and Tim doesn't have children. And so these men are going to need a lot of help when they get out. And these women, they've been holding the fort down, working 2 and 3 jobs. Kids have had to change schools. Families had to have been uprooted and moved. This doesn't end because President Trump is going to take office on January 20th. The need to help these families is ongoing. Financially, emotionally, there's going to be the need for mental health support. I could spend a whole hour here going on and on and on, and Tim will elaborate when he's up next. But if anybody wants to continue helping, in our efforts, you can do that through patriotfreedomproject.com.
You got it, Cynthia. And I guess you got to bolt right now, but I really appreciate you coming on, and I guess I'll continue with Tim right now on his experiences in solitary confinement and being locked up. So, Cynthia, you can stick around, or if you got to go, it's fine.
I appreciate that, and you're in for a big treat listening to Tim.
Okay. God bless you.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for what you're doing. You're a true patriot.
Thank you.
Got it.
Take care.
God bless. God bless. Tim,
You're awesome.
let's get into this, man. So,
right.
damn, bro, 23 hours of solitary confinement.
Yeah, that was a real treat. This is 2021, of course. So turning back the clock, I'm sure people remember what the lockdowns were like in all the blue states during the COVID era. But DC was pretty much worse than any deep blue state. So they used COVID as an excuse to deprive us of pretty much every civil right we were supposed to have as pretrial
Right.
detainees. First of all, they denied us bail. So I was actually given bail by a magistrate judge here in New Jersey. Then the feds overrode it. So I had to stay in jail without bail. I was denied bond, and the U.S. Marshals bounced me around the country until like a couple weeks later. I wound up in
You were
D.C.
treated like a prisoner of war. I mean, no rights,
Yeah.
nothing.
Well, it's literally like I don't know if you watched Con Air, but that's a real thing. Like they actually put us on Con Air. The marshals found they call it diesel therapy. They move us around the country so we don't know what's going on. And then finally, yeah, I wound up in DC, and then we're in solitary confinement because of COVID. Um, and that went on for about a year, just in the
These are
DC
some of the
jail.
worst years America's that's ever happened with America. I mean, think about it from 19 to just recently. I mean, these are
Yeah.
some of the worst years. I mean,
Was a Trojan horse.
right,
It was they were testing the waters. What can they get away with?
correct.
I mean, one, I think they used it to help steal the last election, but also they used it to deny us of basic civil liberties. So I mean, here's an example of how messed up the COVID thing was inside the jail. At least we couldn't receive communion or go to church. Now, granted, if you were a Muslim, you could go to the mosque, but you couldn't receive religious services. You couldn't see your family or get visitations. You half the time you couldn't see your own lawyer. And
So
all
wait,
these
so they
things,
were really specifically targeting Christians.
yeah. I mean, yeah. And I mean, we couldn't. And here's the ironic thing: is like we couldn't go outside half the time we couldn't get outdoor recreation, so we didn't get fresh air or sunlight. Even though you'd think if you're worried about people's health, COVID, like that would, giving people fresh air or sunlight would be a good thing. But no, we couldn't have outdoor recreation because of COVID.
Did they force
It made no
vaccinate?
sense.
Did they force vaccinate you?
Well, that's the funny thing. So this is the most messed up thing, and this is actually what I was leading into. They told people that if they got the shot, they could have civil rights. And so like 5 people ended up getting the shot and they were still denied. So, oh hey, if you want to go to church, take the shot. Just kidding. So
Did you take
yeah,
the
that
shot?
was
If you mind me
I didn't
asking.
take it. No,
Good
I
for
didn't
you.
take it. Appreciate it. You were denied you're denied basic health care. So like there was an old man, a 70-year-old Vietnam vet that was in there with us named Lonnie Kaufman. They lied and said he had Molotov cocktails when he really just had old gas canisters in the back of his pickup truck. They kept this old man in the gulag with us, and his arms and hands had turned purple. So, I mean, he didn't get medical treatment for probably a full year because it was Marjorie Taylor Greene came inside the jail to inspect our conditions, which she was turned away multiple times. She finally got in the fall of 2021, but she'd been trying since the summer. I know that because she had tried to come into the jail the same day my lawyer tried to come in, and they turned both of them away. So, yeah, you couldn't get legal visits half the time. They stole your evidence. So, like, you're a pretrial detainee, right? So, how are you supposed to work on your case? So, they ordered that we were supposed to get these laptops so we could review discovery, look at the evidence. So, they give us, like, you'd have to mail in a flash drive or whatever, or a CD-ROM or something. But the guards would steal it half the time. So, they'd come in, shake down the cells, and try to take your stuff. So, you couldn't work on your case. And there were rats in there and they would tip off the jail, and so they would have legal visits. They would leave, and then suddenly the
So
whole
you had
posse
snitches
was
in the
shaken
jail.
down. Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, which that exists anyway, but I mean it was pretty bad. I'd say like at the worst point, not the whole time, but at the worst point, I'd say like a third of the people in there were rats or plants of some kind. You had Antifa members that were planted in there, federal informants, CHSs, or confidential human sources. And that's another thing. It's just like, so you deny us bail, you put us in this gulag, you did, and then you also are putting people in there whose purpose is to sabotage our cases. So, like
Well,
me, for instance, there were people in there who were feeding information on me, which were lies, but they were sending dirt to NPR to write hit pieces about me from inside the jail. So like, and that was used against me. Like that was in court filings. They had cited these NPR hit pieces on me at my sentencing hearing. So like you think about that, the federal government denies you bail, it puts you in this gulag, and then it plants informants in there with you. Those
wow.
informants then send dirt to NPR, which is National Public Radio. It's publicly funded propaganda to put out hit pieces. Those hit pieces are then cited by the prosecutors. Like this is full circle of due process denial. And so like keep in mind, like throughout the country, our justice system is less than perfect, of course. So there's obviously at every level they have this kind of thing happen to an
But the
extent.
the reason they did this though was to specifically target patriots and go after them so they can just do a broad stroke and go. I mean, they wanted this crisis, this J6 attack on the Capitol to blanket all the patriots and then start going down and or start going house to house, breaking down doors, taking people out of there for online chatter or online this, social media that, posts that regarding this, this was just the beginning of what they
Mhm.
wanted to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you called J6 a psyop. It was a psyop, and the jail was a psyop within a psyop. It was this controlled environment where there was a guy in there. They had tried to argue at my first bond hearing in front of the magistrate that I was like the next Timothy McVeigh. So what did they do? They planted a guy in the jail with me to try to get me to talk about Timothy McVeigh and what a hero he was. And he tried to get me to organize another Oklahoma City bombing. And I'm like, bro, you glow in the dark. And this was true. And again, keep in mind, I was in there for approximately 2 years. You had people there longer. I thank God I went to prison after 2 years because I don't would have lost it. But like people don't really, you really don't understand like the amount of infiltrators by the way, I'm not even saying all these people were necessarily feds on J6, right? Some of these people were probably setting other people up to save their butts after the fact because people do that. Not everybody's strong, right? So you got people who will sell people up the river to get out of trouble too. So it was a mixture.
But you met actual agitators and the crisis actors in jail that came clean with you, right? You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah,
Any
of course.
specific story that sticks out?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've heard of Ashley Babbitt, the woman who got shot through the neck.
Right.
There was a guy who was right next to her. He broke the window where she got shot, so he escalated the situation there. He was an Antifa member. Those guys' name's Zach Alam. So he takes this riot shield, he
And
breaks
he
the
still went to
window.
jail?
Yeah,
I mean, you
yeah.
would think that they have okay. All right.
Yeah.
This is great. Okay.
Well, this is interesting because like we, we knew he was Antifa, but the media, kind of like with Ray Epps, like you see how like the media and the government they do these apology tours for certain defendants, like everybody else is evil, but like oh he's so misunderstood. Ray Epps was oh he's a victim of conspiracy theories. Well, they did the same thing with Zach Alam. It's like there's no evidence he's Antifa. This is a conspiracy theory. He told us. I heard it with my own ears. He admitted he was Antifa. And so like yeah, there were Antifa members there. I'm not saying everything on J6 was
Did you throw
Antifa.
like anybody throw fisticuffs with them? I mean, were people getting in?
He got extracted before that happened. He was very clear he was not welcome, and that so he got taken out. But there were other guys actually. It was a guy named Landon Copeland. He actually, to his credit, I guess, he wrote a public confession, and he said there were hundreds of Antifa with him that assembled there that day. He was a huge agitator on the West Terrace. He's kind of who helped escalate the protest into a riot. People don't realize. So, quick like breakdown, the cops only had like a few. The Capitol Police had like 5 guards guarding the perimeter of the Capitol, which is insane. Obviously, Trump, he offered National Guard support. Everybody turns it down suspiciously. So there's like 5 guarding the perimeter. Ray Epps and a large group of people knock over some barriers on the west side. This happens a half hour before people like me show up. So before Trump's speech is even finished, there were people breaking into the perimeter of the Capitol. This is important because people like me, thousands of people poured into the area, not knowing it was a restricted area. And so most of us are there and we're just chanting USA, we're singing God Bless America, we're saying Christ is King, yada yada. And I have this on my phone. This is why they kept a lot of us locked up. They didn't want the video getting out. So this proves like we had no idea there was anything wrong going on. But at the front of the crowds, you had certain provocateurs who were trying to escalate the situation between the cops
So
and the
easy to
crowd.
see, man. When I watch these videos, it's like, give me a
Yeah.
break.
Yeah, I
Almost
mean it's
sloppy.
well, yeah, I mean that's the thing. When you really look back at the video, you're like, this is totally performative. Like you can see
Yeah.
that there are just provocateurs and agitators planted in the crowd. But so this is really what I'm getting at is that you had certain people who were there to incite the crowd. You call them CHSs or confidential human sources, but there were also Antifa members. Now, I don't know every Antifa guy was working for the government, but it's weird like how they put certain narratives out there to basically downplay this. Like if there were hundreds of Antifa members there, you'd think the government would be all over that. It's the same thing with the gun thing. There's one guy who was charged for discharging a firearm. His name was John Banuelos. They knew who he was and they ignored him for 3 years. He was involved in a stabbing murder out in Utah, and he actually told law enforcement, like, "Hey, is the FBI going to pick me up or what?" So, like, they knew about this. If there was an armed insurrection, why did they wait 3 years to pick up the one dude who actually discharged a firearm? And they only did that because another defendant named Derek Evans, who was a J6er, he ran for office out of West Virginia. He brought attention to it. He watched the video. He's like, "Wait a second, is this guy a Fed?" And then suddenly he gets charged. So there's a lot
Wow.
of weird actors
Just
there, man.
raising the question.
Yeah. Just, I mean, this is what they call burning an asset. So if enough attention is brought on something, oh, then they might charge someone. In the case of Ray Epps, keep in mind, like people were calling him a Fed for years, and suddenly they pick him up and they give him one measly misdemeanor, and he gets probation. He
And there
doesn't
was
even,
more evidence on that guy than anybody. I mean, he's like,
yeah,
storm the Capitol. I mean, the guy was instigating everything,
he
agitating
assaulted
everything.
cops. He actually like
Yes.
there was this giant Trump sign that if you even touched it, you got a 111A or 111B, an assault on an officer. And I know people I was locked up with. They got assault charges just for touching this sign because it was passing near them and they didn't want to get hit by it. But Ray Epps is on video literally grabbing it and trying to shove it into cops. And he gets literally. They actually say in his hearing, yeah, he engaged in some felonious activity, but whatever. You know, nobody gets treated with that kind of with a slap on the wrist unless there's a deeper meaning to it.
So let me
And
ask
so
you
it's
this.
important. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, let's go. I want to talk about solitary confinement and what it was like in there for you. What was that experience like, man? I mean, 23 hours just by yourself, correct?
Yeah. Well,
How does that weigh on you psychologically?
um, I think there's some mitigating factors for someone like me. First is that I'm an introvert and I can always just retreat into my mind. But it's dude, it's like Groundhog's Day. It's like every day is the same thing. You actually lose track of what time like time just flows differently.
So
It's
day
just
to night and day doesn't even you're not even comprehending it.
not really because you have a window kind of, but it's like a 3-inch slot. So and honestly, like people who've been to like the DC jail, or probably a lot of jails, like the window wasn't really a window. It was like a thick piece of glass. It was very fogged up. It was covered in I don't even know. You can't really see out of it. The only thing I could see out my window was a graveyard behind the jail, which is kind of like was pretty morbid actually thinking about it. I used to say
Dude,
this is appropriate because this is where liberty goes to die. But
damn.
on the
So
bright
you had a
side,
view of a cemetery?
yeah, that
Oh
was
my
right.
gosh, does it get any worse, dude?
No, it's a cemetery right behind the jail. Like perfect. But on the bright side, even though our cells were, this is like a crappy facility, but it was like the walls were made from very thick, like concrete blocks or whatever. But on the bright side, the vents, the vent systems in our cells actually connected somewhat. So you could talk to people through the vents. So, like I could talk to my neighbor, and then I could also talk to the two people above us directly because there were like there was two tiers. There's a bottom tier and a top tier of cells. So even though you're locked in solitary, you could still BS with people. But in general, yeah, it was just miserable. Eventually, they would give you like a black tablet where you could like rent movies on. It was just like I was watching Baywatch most of the time. But I mean, it's
And
whatever.
man,
But
you had no idea how long you were going to be in there, how long the sit was going to be.
Pretty much no, because and here's the thing: I talked about civil right denial. Not all of it was the jail's fault itself, but this is part of the experience because those of us who were denied bail, especially, we were denied speedy trials. So in the Constitution, everybody knows the Constitution says, "Oh, you have a right to a fair and speedy trial," but that kind of thing doesn't really explain itself. What is a speedy trial? So that has to be fleshed out with statutory law. So Congress passed the in DC, you have the Speedy Trial Act, and so what that says is that you have the right to a speedy trial within 70 days. Well, guess how long I was waiting in pre-trial detention before I got a trial? Not 70 days. It was 16 months. So I waited a year and a half for a trial, and they kept denying me. Actually, my first trial was but my first scheduled trial was supposed to be in November of 2021, and then they were like, "Oh crap, it's actually happening. He's actually going through with it." No, so they just said, well, COVID's pretty bad still, and we're really backed up. So maybe in the spring. So it was like in the spring of 2022, I finally got a trial. I was supposed to be the first J6 trial actually, but they kicked the can down the road. They just they would just make up excuses. Well, COVID's really bad, or there's so many J6 cases. I'm like, well, whose fault is that? You charged people without investigating them first. It's not my fault that you didn't look at the evidence or that you're
Yeah, guilty
backlogged.
before proven innocent.
That's what it was. They wanted people to just take plea deals and just F off. I mean, that's really what it was. They used the solitary as a torture tactic. They used the detention. I mean, people like me, there were a few people very early on. They called it the shock and awe campaign. They picked up a bunch of people they thought they could get narratives out of. I was a comedian, and they tried to frame me as a neo-Nazi domestic terrorist McVeigh type character. So they deny me bail because I'm a danger to the public. Keep in mind, I served my country for 12 years in the army, and I was a
Right.
Navy
12
contractor
years in the
too.
army.
Domestic terrorist, apparently.
Wow.
And then, but that was the thing. They basically wanted to shame us and torture us into taking plea deals. And I just wasn't about it. And here's another thing too. Like, let's be fair. Let's say I did trespass. Okay. I mean, I don't agree because I didn't know it was an unauthorized area at the time. But let's say I picketed or whatever, because this is what, if you took away the stupid felonies they make up, then really people are just guilty of trespassing or illegal picketing. Okay, that's a ticket. I mean, that's a misdemeanor. But they tried to give people felonious charges and extended prison sentences for I walked to the building. I was in there for 40 minutes and I left. Yeah, I didn't assault anyone. I didn't break anything. I didn't steal anything. And
Yeah, there's
yet I
so
was
many
getting
videos out there showing people just kind of looking around, looking at the artwork, walking around, like, all right, cool.
that's
And there's videos of them letting you guys in.
Well, that's what
Like
I did.
like letting
I was
you
in an area
in.
called the Crypt. Yeah, I was in an area called the Crypt. It's a circular room filled with statues. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm a bit of a troll. I'm a huge troll, and I love me some memes. Yeah, I'm walking around. Someone put Trump hats on the statues. I thought that was funny. I'm not gonna lie. I'm on CCTV, right? And
Yeah.
this is the evidence against me. I'm on CCTV. I see someone. They put a flag, they put a Trump flag in a statue's hand. I'm like, oh my God, that's awesome. So I go up to it and I take a selfie with it. I'm like, oh, I'm a real terrorist, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm on video dancing in the Capitol Visitor Center like a nerd. And it's just like, this is the insurrection. And so they used the video from the staged fighting and provocateurs in the outside of the building on the grounds in very specific areas where there's a million photographers. They used that to portray everything on J6 as this violent upheaval, when in reality, inside the Capitol building itself, there was no violence, which is the opposite of what you would expect from an
Except for that
insurrection.
person getting shot, and that was done.
Yeah, that was done by the Capitol Police. It was Officer Byrd who shot Babbitt through the neck. And then, of course, again, there was the damage to the window by an Antifa provocateur, Zach Alam. But and so this is like the narrative doesn't really make sense. You mentioned, I mean, there were people walking through velvet ropes on the second floor like it was a tour of a museum. I mean, that's not an insurrection
No,
by any definition.
far
And so,
from it.
yeah,
So, I served a little time, and I remember like my greatest pleasure was going to like the vending machines. Were you at least like, when I was able to go get some food, like tuna cans out of the vending machines? Were you allowed that luxury at least, or no?
no, but I mean, there was commissary, like like you could order like junk food or whatever, but for a lot of people too, like keep in mind this was like bleeding people's wallets,
Yeah,
especially like these guys. I mean, you'd heard from Cindy before, like these guys were largely breadwinners of their families, so a lot of these wives, not only were they subsidizing the ability for their husbands to like somewhat enjoy themselves. They were working two or three jobs to keep a roof over the heads of their kids. There were some women, like one woman was selling her blood to pay her bills. And it's just like
this is
people,
horrific.
yeah, I mean, it was a humanitarian disaster. Yeah, I mean, keep in mind, people still lost their homes. They couldn't pay their mortgages. A lot of these guys were small businessmen. I mean, I always say J6ers are not domestic terrorists. They're a fair cross section of American society. So a lot of these guys did construction, or they had their own businesses, stuff like that. A third of us were veterans. And so it's just like these are regular Americans. And so by depriving them of due process, depriving them of bail, of bond, you've actually entirely destroyed their lives, especially at a time, keep in mind, and it's not much better right now under Harris and Biden, but like keep in mind, like how many people are one paycheck away from losing everything? You know what I'm
100%.
saying? Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was just as bad under COVID. So
How did the inmates treat you? Were you, I mean, when you first got there, I mean, I knew you were 23-hour solitary confinement, but before or after, like when you got it, were you the whole time in solitary confinement, or is that just a part of
no,
it?
no. So here's the situation. This is messed up too. Um, I wish I was in general population because you would have had more freedom in Gen Pop. What they had done is they had basically treated us literally as domestic terrorists. And so in the DC jail specifically, you had two sections. You had CDF, which is Central Detention Facility, that's the main jail. And then you have CTF, Central Treatment Facility. It's a medical wing, and they basically housed us in a nut house. And so when we got to the jail initially, we were in Gen Pop, but they basically forced us into protective custody. And like there's only two reasons you want to be in protective custody, and neither of them are good. It's usually for rats or for chomos, but they ended up segregating us into a separate part of the jail. And so all the J6ers were kept in solitary in this one part of the jail. And so for the most part, yeah, I mean, there was the benefit. It was like, hey, I'm with other J6ers. But on the other hand, it was like we would have had more freedom in general population. Because, like I said, they got to have religious services eventually. They didn't have to do this stupid like I'm going to see my lawyer. I don't need to have a stupid windshield in front of us so we can talk. They had visitation from family and all that, and they could just walk through the jail. Like it's like they get hall passes. They could just walk through the whole jail. Meanwhile, we had to get shackled like Hannibal Lecter to go down the hallway to a medical thing. So it's just like, yeah, the whole thing was bizarre. But I mean, I got along with most of the inmates. I actually formed like a tight knit group of people, of friends. But like I said, there were of course still provocateurs in there. There were people who were trying to literally
Well,
sabotage my
what
case.
about like the Antifa guys, the agitators, the proven agitators that were there? Did they get lighter sentences? Did they get just moved out? You don't know what happened to them? Did they get off? I mean, what happened to those guys? The guys that were proven agitators from Antifa
Yeah.
causing the disruption.
Yeah, so it depends. Some of them vary because they're different kinds of plants. So there was one guy, he ended up getting, yeah, he got a plea deal, a cooperation agreement, and he just vanished. And his co-defendant admitted, yeah, he actually got caught in a drug conspiracy in 2020. That's why he was at the Capitol on J6. So this guy was caught by the feds. He got turned out as an asset, and he went there as a crisis actor in this stupid costume. And he's one of the few people who actually assaulted someone in the Capitol. He went out of his way to find a cop to fight with a camera crew.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, it was him and
And
two
let's
other
not forget
co-defendants.
Nancy Pelosi had a camera crew that day as well.
They were working with her. Funny you say that. This one guy, he was actually trying to sell his footage, but yeah, he was doing interviews because Pelosi was making a documentary about J6, and
Yeah.
he was trying to work with her.
She just
Uh,
happened to know, happened to
yeah,
put a team together, a film crew.
all the dots connect eventually. Yeah, there was that. Yet another guy in there. He's still in there, um, but he's been moved to over 20 jails or prisons. And what's interesting about this guy is that he tried to get us to join a militia inside the jail. And it's just like
Wow.
he creates a militia inside the jail. He ends up in someone else's paperwork. There was this defendant named Christopher Finney. They identified him because his information was in this guy's phone for in a militia chat group that was founded right after J6. So immediately after J6, they have this guy trying to set people up with militias. Um, and he's still a pretrial detainee because he's not going to go to trial because he was assaulting cops with a baseball bat for 3 hours. But he tried to set me up. He tried to set all the veterans up with that militia thing. I don't know if you're familiar with the Oath Keepers. They're a group kind of like the Proud Boys, but they did
Right.
security. And I became good friends with the Oath Keepers. This guy tried to get the Oath Keepers to sign a document declaring themselves proud seditionists. Now, they were being charged with seditious conspiracy. Why would he be trying to get them to sign documents claiming they were seditionists? He tried to get us to sign documents advocating the violent overthrow of the U.S. government. It's just like, come on, bro. Like, can you? It's a little on the nose at
Yeah,
this
yeah.
point. Yeah. So I mean, some of them, like I said, I think a lot of these guys had deals with the government before J6, and they kind of were playing parts. Others, I think they got out of hand or they got picked up for J6, and then they just decided to sell their souls and set other people up after the fact. It's hard to know exactly without seeing their paperwork, but yeah, I there was the one guy who tried to set me up as the next McVeigh. He got bail after about a year. He finally got bail because he wrote a letter disavowing President Trump and apologizing to his judge and saying Trump was bad. And all of us in the DC jail, we were cult members because we sang the national anthem at 9 o'clock every night. So
That really
yeah,
happened. At 9 o'clock, you guys were singing the national anthem every night.
yeah. I started that with three other
So
dudes
you were the
before we
ones that
actually got
started
to
that.
DC.
You started that.
Yeah, yeah. I started that. So it
Wow.
began before we got to DC. So me, Michael Curzio, Jeffrey Sable, and Patrick McCoy. We started doing that when we were being moved, like I said, during diesel therapy by the marshals. So anytime we got off Con Air, or we were on a tarmac, or anytime they loaded us in a van to take us to some other crappy jail, we would sing it. And it was somewhat facetiously, but the cops actually enjoyed it, and it's like a
Cops
lot of them
knew.
actually
A lot of the cops knew.
yeah, they empathized with us, and it's just funny because like some of them were like, yeah, if I wasn't working that day, I'd have been there right with you. I'd have been right
Wow.
there. But yeah, so we started that, and then when we got to DC, it kind of got more formalized. We started doing it at 9, um, and yeah, we just do it every night, and that started in early 2021, not long after J6.
So
Yeah.
So what has life been like for you now adapting to, regular life coming out of prison, being there for 3 years? Like, how hard has it been for you? Has it been hard? Like, what are you going through right now?
Uh, I'm a very stoic person, so I'm gonna say like I mean, look, it's kind of like what Cindy said earlier. Like you can't just pick up where you left off, and so I had a good career. If I had stayed in the military and I hadn't got picked up for this, I would be about retirement right about now. Actually, I'd have a pension. I got into the military right after high school, so I'd be close to my 20-year mark. Um, I lost my apartment, but at the end of the day, like I didn't lose so much that I couldn't start over. A lot, like I said, I didn't have a wife or kids. I I lost an apartment. I didn't lose a mortgage or anything, and I
Right.
still have my truck. So I mean, I was able to get back on my feet.
Have you been
it
like
was a little weird.
blackballed or have you been discriminated against?
No, no, but you keep in mind too, like I've been very quiet. So while they were writing hit pieces about me and smearing me for like 3 years, I kept very quiet. And then as soon as I got out of prison, then I came out swinging and I started, releasing video. I started outing feds and outing informants and stuff.
Getting on podcasts, things like that, making yourself
Yeah,
known.
and advocating for the guys that I was locked up with because a lot of them are still locked up, and they got it. I actually got lucky in that regard, and so I always try to stay grounded with that. I have friends who are doing, you know, 6 year, 8 year, 14-year sentences. One guy, Pete Schwartz, he got a 14-year sentence. He beat up a snitch named Brian Mock, who literally wrote a 40-page motion about the dude and put it in his face and said, "This is for your own good."
Oh
Like
man.
it was nuts being in the jail. Like prison was actually a relief compared to the jail. The jail was just it was psychological torture. So it was my buddy was Jeff McKellop. He was special forces. He was a Green Beret, and you would always say, "Yo, man, this is just like Sears school. This is just." It was basically like mental torture, and so maybe to get out, it's a blessing.
I couldn't
But
imagine being in solitary with just a little slit to see out. I mean, I don't know how you coped with that mentally. I know you're an introvert, but still that would do damage to anybody mentally.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely had side effects, no doubt. To what extent, I can't really say. I think it really, for me, it forced me to change how I think. Like there would be times when I was worried about losing memories, and so I would try to tie certain memories to certain songs.
Wow,
So if
interesting.
I, yeah, so if I couldn't remember something, I would just remember a song, and that would just kind of like unlock part of my brain. It's weird to explain, but yeah, I mean it's torture. There's case law and many legal arguments that say that solitary confinement for extended period of time is torture, and that's true even for death row inmates. And meanwhile, we were pretrial detainees on top of it. So I mean, keep in mind, people don't really think about like, yeah, you're innocent until proven guilty, but for a pretrial detainee specifically, we were denied bail, but we weren't convicted. And so we're sitting in this situation and we're supposed to legally be entitled to every form of civil liberty minus the ability to leave the jail, basically. So, but we didn't get that. We were segregated. We were discriminated against. The guards absolutely hated us, at least for the first year. Some of them warmed up to us, and that's how we knew that. I guess I didn't explain this, but they cleared the jail out for us before J6. They knew we were going to be there.
Really?
So,
That's
yeah,
huge.
one of the guards, he grew fond of us, and he admitted he was like, yeah, they cleaned this place out for you guys because it's a condemned wing. Um, it's an absolute dump, and so it's just like, well, they cleaned
Wow.
it out because they knew we were going to be there. But for the
Damn.
most part,
More
they thought we
proof
were
this
all.
was false flag, man. I
Oh,
mean,
absolutely,
this
absolutely. And if you look at the social media, the deputy warden there, she ended up getting fired, but she was a virulent Trump hater, and so yeah, they would go out of their ways, especially the upper brass. I think some of the lower guards, some of the guys at the bottom, they resented us because of J6 because they were local. Like they took it pretty personally, but also I think they ate a lot of they believed the propaganda. They drank the Kool-Aid, but after a
right.
while, they warmed up to us because they realized these guys are nothing. You know. And here's a funny aside: like throughout most of the jail, the pods there, the guards sit behind this giant plastic bubble with a control apparatus,
Yeah, I
because
know.
they're worried about it getting stabbed.
Yep.
The inmates will squirt human cocktails. I won't explain what that means.
Oh
They'll
yeah.
squirt
Oh, it's
Meanwhile,
nasty, dude.
yeah, but where we were, it was all open. The guards slept all day at a mahogany desk while we walked around. So clearly they weren't in that much danger. But it was the
They
upper
weren't that
brass.
concerned. They knew you were good people. They knew what was going
Yeah,
on deep down.
yeah. I mean, it's to some level there was probably cognitive dissonance where they still kept that mindset, but yet they still chose to come to they chose to work where we were because they knew that one, it wasn't dangerous. Two, they could sleep all day. Three, they could get overtime. It was a good John. It was easy. But it was the upper brass over the long term. Like we were still wearing COVID masks into 2022. Literally the entire 2 years I was
I
there, you had to wear a COVID mask
I
or
was
you would
always
get.
just really curious about like forced vaccination. So they didn't force vaccinate you. They just kind of pressured you into it.
Yeah. Yeah, like they were like it was weird. It was like there were these like Orwellian signs on every wall and every hallway. Take your shot, social distancing. Meanwhile, again, it's 2 years into this, and they're trying to make people wear masks outside on recreation. Like just saying this, I feel like a jackass because it's just like nobody could believe this unless they've been through
Well,
it.
people are still wearing masks. Okay,
Yeah, that's true.
I'm telling you, bro. I mean,
That's
and
true.
and you know what really concerns me is when I see it at hospitals. They
Hmm.
still believe this shit. The doctors and the nurses, they're still paranoid about this, and there are medical experts. I don't think masks do anything. They don't do a damn thing to me. So,
No.
I mean, it's just the fact that our medical experts are still, buying this hook, line, and sinker. That's what's fucking concerning to me.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I mean, it's just it's social conditioning at the end of the day. It's
Yeah,
like some giant
100%. Yeah,
humiliation
yeah.
ritual.
You go to Walgreens and they still have those stickers on the floor, 6 feet apart, and they still play it over the intercom. Keep your distance. I mean, it's just social conditioning.
Yeah. Meanwhile, we're in solitary. How are we getting COVID unless the guards bring it in? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's
Yeah.
just like use social distance. Get away from me.
Well, Tim, man, I really enjoyed having you on. This was awesome. This was epic. I really appreciate you. Where do people go? Do I just put the Project Freedom, PatriotFreedomProject.com? Is that where they go?
Yeah, go to patriotfreedomproject.com. Anybody that is willing to contribute, we definitely appreciate it because, like I said, I mean, look, let me be perfect frank. I hope this is the last holiday where we're going to have to do this. When Trump gets into office, I hope he makes everybody whole. But the truth is that he's not getting in for another month. Christmas is coming up, and a lot of families do still need support. So if anybody can help out, please do.
Let me ask you this just for a second before I let you
Yeah.
go. How do you feel about coming into this inauguration? Do you think they're going to try something else?
I hope not. Um, you know, I've seen pictures recently, like they're setting up the stage, for the inauguration. But I don't know. Like, here's the thing: is like J6 was a horrible precedent because all the same with COVID, like all the horrible things they got away with as a result of it, that created precedent which could echo, for generations. And I don't want that to happen. And I don't want to go. I don't want to like. I want people held accountable for setting us up, but I don't want witch hunts of my political opponents. So my hope is that they don't stage another like left wing J6,
Yeah,
and then this whole
right,
thing just
right.
starts all over again. So,
That's what I was
but
wondering, actually.
yeah, I'm more concerned about them sabotaging his presidency once he's in. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, dude, there's so much stuff I could tell you. If you listen to the Wire recording, my roommate was trying to ask me if I was going to attend riots or protests again after J6. I'm like, "Are you wearing a wire?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm wearing a wire." I'm like,
Do they
"Wearing
have
a
to
wire?"
admit it if you ask, or what? Is that how that works, or
Apparently
what?
not, because I asked him twice and he started sweating. And
Oh,
that's
so he didn't. But you just said he said, "Yeah, I'm wearing a wire," but he didn't, or he didn't.
yeah, he was being sarcastic or trying to sound sarcastic.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But yeah, so but yeah, it's just like, would you ever do that again? I'm like,
No,
so I
get the
mean,
fuck out of here.
dude, the militia stuff, like not for nothing, like I'm co- that's the lasting consequences. Now I have to be hyper aware literally of everything and everything I say and everyone I talk to. And as an American, you shouldn't have to, but that's where we are. You never know.
No, that's
So
why I always say in my programs, I don't go to events. I don't. I
yeah,
sit my
don't
happy ass
join.
at
I
home.
don't join groups.
No.
It's
Well,
just you're asking to be entrapped, unfortunately. But
yeah.
that's what we are.
Thank you, Tim, for joining me. Where do people find you?
You can find me on X if you just type in Tim Hale, criminally funny J6er. Yeah, I know.
Criminally
Funny
funny. All right.
J6er.
That's long.
I know. It's worked so far, but
But
yeah.
I mean, they can just find you Tim Hale
Yeah.
on X. Cool. All right, folks. Go show him some support and follow him on X. Thanks, Tim. I appreciate you, man. God bless
Thank you
you.
so much for having me on, man. I
And
thank
thank
you.
you for your service.
Well, yeah, I try. Thank you,
Both
man.
times. God bless.